Hello, my name is Yordan Pavlov, and currently I'm working in SAP. Today I'll try to share with you how we actually used Eclipse Dirigible in SAP for the project XSK. And with that, I'm going to continue to the next slide. So for those of you who didn't know what Eclipse Dirigible is, I'll try to briefly capture it for you because this talk will be mostly about extensibility and about how we actually adopted Eclipse Dirigible in Project XSK. So as a quick overview, what Eclipse Dirigible is, it is a web IDE. So you can log in from your browser, you can write, of course, some kind of code, and actually it also has a runtime environment. So in the end, the code that you've written in the browser should run somewhere, and that's also Eclipse Dirigible. It provides this in-system development lifecycle. So, or let's say development model. So what you can do is actually without any, let's say, build or deployment process, you can assume that the code that you've written just runs on the fly. So you can, for example, deploy Dirigible in one complex landscape, in a real landscape, and instead of having a local development environment where you have to mock all of the services and etc., then you can just use Dirigible to really use that services on the fly and really build your code on the fly. And the third pillar is about low-code and no-code tooling. So Dirigible provides such tooling which really makes the life of developers easier. And finally, if you want to learn more, you can simply go to dirigible.io and go through the site. So let's dig a little deeper. So as I said, the web ID, you can see it actually on the right-hand side. There's a screenshot of it. It has, like any standard web ID, several perspectives, views, and etc. But here I'll talk a little bit about the technologies that we use underneath. So it's written in actually AngularJS. Yes, the Angular 1.js, not Angular 7 or 8 or anything. We actually plan to update that, but let's keep that for later. We're using heavily Bootstrap for the CSS. At the runtime, as I said, Dirigible has a web ID and a runtime. The runtime is Java-based. It has close to 340 Maven modules, so it's really big, let's say, even huge project. But let's keep things simple. The good part is that from this 340 modules or so, like 200 or 220 are actually for the web ID itself. And we have some part which is actually like helper modules and so on. So the real dirigible code is, let's say, 40, 60, 80 Maven modules or so. I think that maybe I missed to mention so far is that the primary language that we use for development and for our target development model is JavaScript. And it is actually, okay, you can say, cool, you have this Java backend, but how do you run JavaScript? We're using GraalJS. So this is, again, open source project coming from Oracle, where you can, in your Java program, you can interpret JavaScript code. And basically, all of our logic and runtime is based around this GraalJS engine. And on top of that engine, we provide this enterprise JavaScript API. So in contrast to Node.js, and maybe I can mention a few words here also about the differences. So in Dirigible, you have mood-threaded synchronous environment, and you can think of it just like a normal Tomcat server. and that means that the JavaScript code is executed in multiple threads, and you don't have to write this async await thing that you have to do in Node.js and so on. And on top of that, we've provided a standardized JavaScript API because we came from the Java world. We love standards, and let's say we provide something that is close to JDBC, and something that is taking the most of the cool features that JavaScript is providing. So we're kind of mixing the two worlds of Java and JavaScript. It's a really nice and easy API to be used. Of course, you can bring your own, or in some cases, you can just copy some of the Node.js modules that you are using and bring them also to Dirigible also. All right, so a little bit of history. So the inception of Dirigible was back in 2011, sorry. 2011, it is more than 10 years ago. It was incubated in SAP. Initially, it was an internal proprietary project, but after a few years, we realized that it is better to donate that project to the open source community. And initially, it was published in SAP's GitHub repository in 2013. And after a few more years, we went to the Eclipse Foundation, and we are a member in the Eclipse Foundation since 2015. Also, Dirigible is part of this Eclipse Cloud Development Tools working group. So it is a top-level project, and it has a few other projects like Eclipse J, Eclipse Thea, Cloud Foundry Tools, and a few others. And if you are interested about the history, you can visit this tiny URL link about the history, or you can just Google Eclipse Dirigible born in SAP Labs, Bulgaria. It should be the first result in the search engine. Okay, so I'll try to wrap up the last 2 years for us as a community, as the Dirigible community. And actually, this 2 years we saw the major growth and let's say explosion in the interest about the project and contribution in basically in every way. So for the present day, we have like 20 plus contributors, so they're full-fledged committers that can basically do anything, and they could trigger releases and what is actually needed, and so on. They could review pull requests and so on and so on. We will try to grow even further this contributors list, but this is in the near future. So since 2020, we had like 3 major releases. We have this 4.0, 5.0, and 6.0 versions. We try to provide major release each and every year. And during the same period of time, we had like more than 110 releases in total with minor and bug fixing versions. We've managed to close more than 500 GitHub issues, and at the trial, actually, Dirigible has a free trial that can be used if you go to trial.dirigible.io. So far, we have for that period of time, we have more than 1,000 users that were using Dirigible. And now it's time to switch to the main focus of the presentation. So this is Project XSK, and let's start first with what Project XSK is about. So it is again an open source project. It can be found on xsk.io. Later on the demo, I'll show you the site and a few other things. And the main goal here is to provide a compatibility environment for SAP HANA XS applications. And you ask, okay, what these SAP HANA XS applications are about. So in SAP, we have these cloud environments. Actually, we have a few of them, like SAP BTP Neo, SAP BTP Cloud Foundry, and SAP BTP Kima, where the Cloud Foundry and the Kima environment, which is actually Kubernetes based, are let's say based on open source and open standards. And rather on the other hand side, we have this BTP New, which was developed in the early days of the cloud development, and it was totally proprietary. And with that, we have several types of applications, and one of the types of application was this SAP HANA XS applications. And it was, as I said, it was proprietary, it wasn't based on open source standards or anything. And it turned out that these kinds of applications are really hard to be migrated to the new world, to the new platforms. And what we did, actually, we used Eclipse Dirigible to build a foundation layer. And on top of that, we, let's say, added the XSK modules, which can support the execution of the SAP HANA XS applications. So I won't really talk about this SAP HANA XS applications, but rather for the extensibility and for the modularity that Eclipse Dirigible provides, and how actually we built this open source project. Great. So as a quick overview, from pure technology point of view, again, as you can imagine, project XSK is again Java based. It has 50 plus Maven modules, so it's relatively smaller compared to the 340 plus modules that Dirigible has. We are heavily using other open source projects and technologies like parsers, which are based on Antelope 4, and we are using these to process different artifacts which were, let's say, defined in this SAP HANA XS applications. So they're not standard artifacts like XML or JSON or something that has an existing parser for it. And for each and every type of artifacts, I'll quickly go at the demo through them. We had to build a parser. So let's say we have like maybe 10, 15 artifacts that we have to support. That means that we have to build like 10, 15 parsers. And we did that with the grammar that Antelope 4 is providing. We packaged that into a Maven modules. The code actually could be seen at github.com/acp/xsk. Again, it is open source. It is under, if I'm not mistaken, it is under Apache license. And actually, at this point of time, what project XSK is a full-fledged Eclipse Dirigible plus a migration perspective. So, of course, underneath we have some processors, some synchronizers, and whatsoever to support actually the runtime for this SAP HANA XS application. But from pure web IDE point of view, this is 100% dirigible plus a migration perspective, which is actually showcasing that extension perspective views and a few other items could be delivered for dirigible. About XSK, it has a few versions which you can try to run locally on Cloud Foundry or in a Kima environment, which, as I said in the beginning, also maybe I forgot, but the Kima SAP BTP Kima environment is based on the Kima project, which is again open source project by SAP. You can find it on kima/project.io, and it is providing Kubernetes with few additional resources like service binding and so on. So how is actually made? As I said, the major contribution to on top of Dirigible is this migration perspective and the parsers. So leaving for the moment the parsers and the processors behind the scene, we have this migration process, which is actually running on top of activity. So inside Dirigible, we have this support for BPM processes, which are running on activity, again, an open source project. The cool thing about it is that in Dirigible, we've made it possible to execute JavaScript as handlers for each and every task. And what we did with Project XSK is to provide this setup, having a BPM process which has underneath JavaScript handlers, and actually, let's say the 99% of this migration process is JavaScript. We have a few minor helper classes in the Java itself that we call from time to time. In XSK, we have this, or let's say in SAP HANA XS applications, we have this XSJS API, which is again a JavaScript API. And because in Dirigible, as I said, we had this enterprise JavaScript API, we are actually baking the XSJS API through the Dirigible JavaScript API. In SAP HANA XS applications, we have also XS data, which is again backed by the Dirigible data services. And as I said, we had to provide few synchronizers in order to synchronize this extension types like HDB table and so on, which are available in the SAP HANA XS application type. So on the right hand side, you can actually take a look at our link for the Kima environment. So it's pretty simple, and it extends this or uses this dependency, which is Dirigible /SAP/Kima/base. And on top of that, we add our modules, and that's it. You can basically package your Word file like that, and you can build your own Dirigible. So, as I said, about the migration perspective, we are using this activity BPM process. Actually, it kind of have a separate lifecycle, which means it has a separate repository where we can deliver the migration process on its own. And once we are happy with what we have, we can merge it back to the main repository. And as I said, because it is using JavaScript handlers, it can be think of like extending Dirigible with Dirigible. So it's like an inception. And let's, with regards to time, I'm going to quickly go through the demo. So right now I'm at XSK.io. You can visit the site later. As I said, it has a lot of artifacts. So for these artifacts, we've provided these parsers and synchronizers at the backend. We have also these APIs, and for each of them, we are actually using what we have in Dirigible as a backend, basically, and so on. And maybe a quick, let's say, kudos to Material for MK docs, which are providing really easy way to develop this kind of documentation sites. And we've used this heavily in XSK and in Dirigible as well. So if you go to xsk.io, you can play the video to see actually what XSK is about. But as we are in a live demo, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this try it out button. Actually, you can use it as well. And you can log in with Gmail or I think Twitter and Facebook. So this is possible. As I said, right now, Eclipse Dirigible, Project XSK is 100% Eclipse Dirigible plus this additional migration perspective. And that's what I'm going to show you quickly. So it looks like this, and I can click to migrate a live project, and here I can select the correct region, provide some authorization information to log into SAP BTP platform and to list the SAP HANA databases. Then I can select the database. So what I didn't mention is that SAP HANA XS applications are this type of applications which run on the SAP HANA database itself. It's really interesting, but I really don't have the time to explain it in more detail because the session is quite short. And I'm going to quickly rush through the demo. So then I can select the workspace and I can select the delivery unit, which is basically the, let's say, the application that I want to migrate to the new environment. So what this migration process is doing, it is fetching the application data, the application content, and it is running some modifications on top of it. For example, you can see that we have even a git diff view, so it can be seen what actually this migration process has done, and it has generated this public synonyms file, this normal synonyms file, let's say. This is HANA deployment infrastructure, if I'm not mistaken. So it's another file that was generated and so on. And the interesting part is that we actually have to do some modifications in the artifacts themselves. So it's not pure copy and paste and then just generate few other files. So it has to have some handling. So it's a really interesting process. And if you imagine an application having, let's say, thousands of calculation views and hundreds of HTTP tables and so on, this process is really cumbersome and it can be done manually or it's really error prone, and that's why we've developed this project XSK. And finally, I have this nice little migrate button, which I can click. It takes a second, and then after that, I can go to the workspace. So it's a normal dirigible workspace, and in that I can see my project. So it has all the files and so on. We have some additional views for the problem. So as this is a trial instance, we have a lot of problems here listed, but it is not the thing that we're interested right now. So basically, this was the demo. It was really a short one, and I want to continue with the presentation. Yes, we don't have really much time. So with Dirigible, there's so it has this extensibility options. You can provide runtime extensions that go, which are the things that you see in the web IDE itself, like the migration perspective. You can do it actually on the fly. So you don't have to, let's say, rebuild Dirigible. Of course, if you want to package it at the end, then you have to go through the creation of POM XML, then provide your content as a WebJar and so on and so on. But we call this runtime extensions. We have a similar thing for the API. So if, for example, you have this cool AI API that you want to use in your own dirigible instance, then you can provide, let's say, and assume it has a Java backend, so you can provide a Java facet. On top of it, you can extend it with JavaScript. I think last year in my session, I showed exactly how this is done. So I won't repeat myself. And the second option is actually to use only submodules of Dirigible, so only the modules that are, for example, for the OData itself. So you can just embed it in your Spring application or your other Java legacy code, and this will expose OData service for you. We have the same thing for the persistency, and few other submodules could be let's say, embedded standalone. And of course, what you saw with XSK is actually how to build your own dirigible. So you can just extend few of our Relink modules, provide your own modules, and that's it. Great. So maybe for a minute or two, I'll go through the outlook. So we have this, or we will have in a month or two time this new look and feel, which is quite superior to what we currently have, and we are really eager to see it coming. And from the guys in the team, I heard that it is even possible for people with disabilities for them it will be easier to use that new web IDE, but maybe we'll have a separate session for that, maybe next year or so when this is finally ready. Again, we're also focusing on the low-code, no-code part with this next-gen modeling. We, as of now, have this entity data model and business process model, and we're going for this business object designer, which you can see previous screenshot on the top. And the last, and maybe the question that we get all of the time, who's providing support for Eclipse Dirigible? So far, it was entirely a community support. Of course, the community support is going, but we're happy to say that we have right now 3 companies that are providing an enterprise support. These are Digital Lights, Quantero, and Codebase. And if you want to get an enterprise support for Dirigible, you could go to their sites. So I think I've made it. And I think we have like 3 minutes for Q&A. And the first question is, I'll first read them out loud. So very interesting project. How long did it take to build project XSK on top of Eclipse Dirigible? So actually it took us like 2 to 3 months to set up the whole thing. I mean, the GitHub CI/CDs, the GitHub project, the Maven modules, and so on. But if you want to have a rough sketch of that, you can do it, let's say, in 1 or 2 days time. It can be done really quick. So if you want to provide or build your own dirigible, it can happen in a matter of days or weeks. And let's say for the functionality that we have right now, it took us like a year so far. Basically, we started working on Project XSK around March or February last year. It was something like that. Okay, so the second question is, can you share some best practices that were used in Project XSK? So some of the best practices is, for example, in Dirigible, we learned that using the GitHub actions for CI/CD pipelines, it is very nice, very easy, and this is a thing that we are heavily relying on. So we can really easy trigger a release process. Even it has this nice form, so you can go there and trigger it and just type the version, and this will produce the respective Docker images. For Dirigible, it will also produce jar files in the Maven central repository. For XSK, so far we don't provide such jar files, and it will, for example, also update the Kubernetes cluster and update with the release version. So basically, the trial will be updated as well. So this is basically some of the best practices. Of course, we have others about the code quality and so on. Recently, we're using Sonar and so on, but I really have like a minute and I have one more question. So do you see benefits of Project XSK being open source? Yes, definitely. We see a lot of benefits. And actually, our SAP partners and customers are the one which are, let's say, most happy about it, because as I said in the beginning, this type of applications were really like appropriate one, and it was not possible, let's say, to move elsewhere, or at least to have some visibility if this or project just stops or it was canceled because of something, then the customer or the partner could just continue working on XSK as it is open source. It can be forked and so on. And this is about the interaction with customers and partners, and having them the security that this one day won't be just deleted and this development model won't be supported anymore or something like that. And the second thing is that we don't have to, let's say, keep to the development and release lifecycle, which is standardized in SAP, and we can do quick releases like one or several times per day. So let's say we can fix a critical bug for the customer, then trigger a release quickly, and in 15-20 minutes time, you can just update the customer's instance, and that's really something that the customers are really happy about. And with that, I think my time is over, and thank you for your questions. If you want to reach us out, you can go to xsk.io or to dirigible.io. We're using the GitHub forum, the GitHub discussions, so you can just type there your question or an issue, or just try to contact us via mail. Thank you.